I'm not sure we know who Beethoven was. We have a lot of words and pages in history books that tell us who Beethoven was, that he was cantankerous and ornery and he is unhealthy, kind of from the get. So we hear that, and we hear that he was a genius and that he devoted his life to this music and pushing the art form, which obviously he did when you listen to the music. That's always what's interesting about doing a piece like this, working with someone who's so revered in that way, and that somehow you want to break down the reverence around him, Beethoven, shift it to the music in some ways, and say, we don't know who he was ultimately.
Beethoven was, many would say, the greatest composer, certainly of the 19th century. He was a sad, I think, lonely, isolated human being who, against all odds, created some of the most important music ever written. Theater doesn't answer questions, it only asks. How did he do it? What was happening inside him? What was he hearing in his head? How did it work for him? What made him be who he was, what he did? Why does it move us the way it does?
He understood very well where the music was at his time and how he wanted to move it forward. So he's a bit of a revolution. What makes it fascinating is, why do we still listen to that music? It's because it still speaks to us. And in a way, if we didn't have him, maybe all the music we hear today wouldn't be where it is. Because of its brilliance, because it still inspires us, and because we're still wondering how it was possibly written.
We'll be on stage with the orchestra. It's I'm myself as this sort of moderator, accidental moderator, we should maybe call it. And then Sarah Agnew, who will be the historian. And then Steve Epp will be roaming the stage as Beethoven. We'll have Beethoven on stage as sort of a presence, as sort of like a specter almost in some ways, and doesn't speak. The music sort of speaks for him in some ways. That's his voice, in our piece at least. And then you have these two characters who are in some ways sort of divorced of him. They're not quite related to him. So they're taught, I think, having distance from him, but having this kind of idea of one being really sort of fascinated by him from a historical standpoint, and one being fascinated by him, but just kind of because he's fascinated with a lot of things, the moderator, I think it allows us to approach him from today rather than try to approach him just historically and create some sort of narrative that we weren't there for, but sort of create a narrative that feels like it's happening right now.
You have the presence of an orchestra who play Beethoven's work for you, which is astounding and undeniable. The presence of these characters starts to give it context, starts to make you hear the music, or helps you hear the music, or allows you to hear the music in maybe from a new angle or in a new way. It puts it into context. And then I think because we're going to bring the actual presence of Beethoven, it's somewhere between a lecture dem and an evening of theater, a twist on a biopic of Beethoven.